Hey, Eric.
Hey, John, how's it going? Out there in the Mile High City?
I'm in Colorado at the moment. So, yeah, kind of pre-apologies perhaps. My hotel room, this is not the nicest hotel ever, let's just say. And I'm at the very end, right above kind of the freeway. So I could hear the cars going by.
I can occasionally hear probably a louder vehicle pass by
Yeah,
through the mic. So,
like a
yeah,
truck or something. Yeah, it is
yeah,
what it is.
yep.
Yeah. Oh, early on in this, I'm gonna have to say that you're gonna have to teach me how to fish a little bit better. We're 96 episodes in, and I did go back and listen to a couple of the last episodes with
Uh-huh.
a crappy podcast player, and there is clearly an audio difference between our channels, which
Yeah.
is in a good podcast player like Overcast, it just auto normalizes. And so I've never noticed that, but I'm going to have to owe people an apology and thank you for actually bearing with that. And I did go back to your last one where you were editing with Ferrite and it seemed to be good. So I might have to, next week's my turn again. So I might have to spring for Ferrite.
Yeah, the last one was where I actually tried doing the post-production audio leveling. So it should pull up your quiet voice. It should make them even once the tracks are all merged, but we'll see.
Did you do that in Audacity?
No, I did that in Ferrite.
In Ferrite, okay.
Yes, the last episode was 100% in Ferrite. I've tried over the last, as I've been moving into Ferrite, doing like the noise reduction in Audacity and then exporting that and then pulling that into, because I'm still learning Ferrite. So,
Yeah.
stick with what I was comfortable with until last episode. I think I've got it down now to where it's, yeah, I think I'm getting close to being 100% Ferrite.
Yeah, well, I'll have to be better. So that can end the meta part of this, but I'm sorry, everyone. Hey, what'd you do this weekend? Did you have a good week?
Yeah. So this weekend so every weekend going into October, we have the annual family tradition of going to the apple farm and the pumpkin patch and getting the pumpkins and getting apple cider and just kind of doing the activities out at the apple farm and the pumpkin patch. And this year we kind of got sidetracked because in the notes I put hashtag because teenagers.
Yeah,
But
what does that mean? I mean, that could mean so many things.
yeah, so we ended up shortening usually it's like a good half day of going out and having fun and playing around, and they just weren't that interested this year.
Oh, so
they're like,
they've
look,
outgrown
I got
this.
my caramel apples. Yeah, I got my caramel apples. I got my pumpkin. We don't even need to go to the pumpkin patch because the apple farm had pumpkins as well. And
Is this the apple farm right by my house?
yeah, just
Okay.
well, yeah, just down past
By the
the roundabout. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, so we went there and I got a bunch of apples because I wanted to try making apple pie afterwards. So, anyways. Yeah, the teenagers were not as into it as they have been in past years, and so it was a shorter.
Disappointing as a parent, isn't it? You're like, no, don't you understand? This is something that you'll really enjoy. Like in another 10 years, you're gonna
That's
be
right.
like, oh,
Remember when we went? Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
It's all good.
Well,
It's all
if
good.
you need a couple extra pumpkins, I know a guy.
I do think I want to take you up on some butternut squash though.
Okay,
You sent me those pictures.
I got all the squashes. I told a friend, I'm like, we got butternut, we got acorn, we got spaghetti. I didn't plant pumpkins, but I know what a pumpkin looks like, and those are clearly pumpkins. Mm-hmm. And we got what I called Frankens. The mother of a friend was like, "Oh, I've never heard of a Franken pumpkin. What's that?" And I'm like, "They crossbred. It's Frankenstein." I don't know. Actually, I haven't cracked one of them open, but I'm pretty sure that the spaghetti squash seems to be dominant. So
Yeah.
those are spaghettis plus something else. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, we have, probably not kidding, hundreds of pounds of squash. It's so easy instead of planting 1, why not plant 4?
That's right.
And,
They just grow.
I had a, so Shirley's idea of this year was, we had a big sort of compost pile from the critters. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, let's just plant the squash into that. We'll have like Squash Mountain this year. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. They'll probably really love it. And so we took a traffic cone and put it at the top of the mountain so that we could put like a round sprinkler on top of it, mm-hmm. and it would get above the squash like leaves. And so we literally had a traffic cone with a sprinkler on the top of it that was on a timer. So it took no extra work on our part to have
Squash Mountain,
the Squash Mountain versus like single squash plant. But then you get to the end and you're like, well, what are we going to, like, I don't think we're actually going to eat all that squash. Eric, come here. Maybe actually a friend of ours came over on Sunday, I guess. And she was like, oh yeah, I'll totally take a squash or two. And Shirley's like, how many? And she's like, well, whatever you don't want. Shirley's like, okay.
You don't want that
so
many.
She totally loaded. She totally loaded up the whole back of her car. She's like, well, we'll use some for decorations. And we're like, I don't care what you do with them. You do whatever the heck you want with them. Anyway, so that was part of my weekend because we did it was sort of the last chance we think to do some of the replant. We took down Squash Mountain so that we could spread out all the compost on the garden and till it all in, and so that it'll be good for next spring.
The rains have begun in earnest, I'll tell you that.
That's what my wife said this evening. She was like, actually it was accompanied by that gutter really needed to have been fixed before you were 3 states away and the rains began in earnest.
Right.
There is always a list. Yep. So the fun thing I was actually going to say for this past weekend was a buddy of mine came over and we flew his drone for a while, and which was super cool.
Yeah, I was very disappointed I wasn't able to come out and see it.
Well, 2 things. Yeah, you totally should have come out. It would have been worth it. But then B, we failed for like the cool videos. What's it called? Like the SD card must not have been seated properly, and we didn't, like, we checked with the couple early flights and we're like, okay, yes, everything's working. Camera works, the videos work. All right, let's go do the real stuff. We did the real stuff, and then we got back and we're like, evidently when we plugged it back in, we didn't plug it back in all the way, so we didn't get the videos we had hoped for. But the cool thing about so this was a kit that he put together,
right.
quadcopter. But the whole point is automation or autonomous flight. So it was totally point and click, where you would say, go to 20 meters, go, and then on a map, like we literally had to go get him on my Wi-Fi so it could download maps from my place. Then on the map, you say, go to this point at whatever other meters, then go to this point, then go to this point, and then return and land. And so
right.
I did fly it manually a little bit, but it was mostly just all automated.
Automated is the way to go with drones. I have a drone which I spent some time trying to fly, and it now sits in a box at home.
Do you know if it can be automated?
I don't know. I'm sure there are probably DIY hacks to do it, but
yeah. Well, anyway, that was totally fun, but I'm really disappointed the video didn't come out because we totally like sent it up and then flew it straight at Mount Hood for a little bit to try and get a nice like mountain picture, and
right.
And I had it flying. Probably I don't want to overstate it, so I'll say the longest flight path I had it on was probably 3/4 of a mile of go here, then go there, and then go there, and then go there, and
right.
I mean, at times it was it was hard to see. It was far enough away. It was cool. And we also tested, by the way, the return home, because it's constantly sending back telemetry, and if it loses connection for more than 10 seconds, it'll just return back to wherever it launched from. And so one of our early experiments was to yank out the USB for the receiver on the computer. So wait until it hit a spot and we knew where it would be going, and then pull it out so that 10 seconds later, while it was en route to another waypoint, it just turned around and came straight back to us. It was cool. It was awesome. Totally worked. All right, we should actually probably get to the security part of the Mostly Security podcast.
Yeah, I know you threw one item in follow-up.
I did.
Back to the super micro thing we've chatted about a couple times.
Yeah, I'm gonna still say that I'm remaining on the skeptic fence for the actual article itself. But this was a Wired story that had a guy do a proof of concept, for about $200 to add a basically a little intercept chip that would give him control of hardware. And it was kind of cool how he did it and what he did. And he did say that, there are smaller chips even than what he chose to do this on. And even so, this is, and that you could certainly hide them underneath a shield of some sort. But, essentially what he did was he basically made it so that on boot up, the chip would automatically connect to the serial port. Well, the whole point of the serial port on many hardware devices is to allow for recovery if you actually have access locally to the box. Because if, what do you do when you've forgotten the password? Well, there's got to be a recovery mechanism of some sort. Otherwise, it's a total brick. So anyway, so this was just kind of follow up. This was from the Bloomberg article from last year sometime about the supply chain and lots of PC manufacturers having spy chips on their motherboards. So it's a good article. You should go check it out. What do you got for a topic?
All right. So my topic I will throw in there it was a little bit of a tempest in a teapot, I think, but you are very familiar with
Oh gosh, that is
Sudo.
That is a crazy title. I love it. Okay.
So we'll get to the title in a sec. There is a tool on Linux or Unix machines called sudo or sudo. I don't know how you want to pronounce it. Sudo.
I pronounce it sudo.
It basically stands for the super user can do something, right? Yeah, I say sudo, but it probably super user do. And the point is to allow just a regular user the ability to not screw things up, but if they need to do something with escalated privileges, there's a tool where you can just run sudo, the command, and if you have permissions to do it, it will run that command with escalated privileges, and then you're back doing just your normal regular privileges on Unix systems. Well, this bug in certain scenarios allows a user to pass in their user ID to do, because one of the commands with sudo you can do is you can tell it what user you want to emulate to do a command as, and it doesn't have to be root. It typically is admin or root, but it doesn't have to be. Well, they found that in certain scenarios, if you do sudo and pass the user ID of -1 or maxint, what is it? 4,294,967,295. You pass in that user ID instead of the username, and it will escalate that.
You are kidding me.
User to root, even if they're not supposed to be root. But the best title is after that article first came out. The first kind of came out. It was all excited. Then as people looked at that and realized what it was, and all the scenarios that had to happen for you to do that, and the things you had to ignore to make that happen. The title of the article that you're referencing is Much Sudo About Nothing. I'll say it because I do, but Much Sudo About Nothing. Much Sudo About Nothing. What a great headline.
That is a great title.
Anyway, so
like whoever came up with that, they were just like cackling, like, I am so smart. This is the best title ever.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it is a very specific way you have to have set things up, and even the sudo manual points out using the all command can be dangerous because that means a user can run the command in the system and any user, and there's a bunch of different kind of gotchas along the way. This is not going to affect mom and dad or your home computer. It's really kind of on the edge of what people might actually do. That being said, there is already a patch for it, and you should patch, if you're in this situation, you should patch it because it's a bug. But it's one of those that sounds really scary because you can make it, and your demos for it, you can make the demos look very, very scary. but in practice, it's a bit overhyped. So,
Yeah.
anyways, and then I also had to throw in the obligatory XKCD. If you remember this one.
I do. So this is an older one, though, right?
Yes, it's an older one.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was like, wait, this, okay. I thought it was.
No, this didn't come out as a result of this. This reminded me of the, anytime I hear sudo in the news, or there's the XKCD, which we'll put in the link, but it's, hey, make me a sandwich. And the other person like, hey, make it yourself. The guy says, sudo, make me a sandwich. And it's okay.
Okay.
That just tells you what sudo,
right.
the power of sudo.
It is. That's good. Oh, it's actually XKCD 149. So it's not just old, it's super old, I think.
It's original XKCD.
Yeah. I wish he had dates. Like when would it have come out? Anyway. Okay, that's funny. That's great.
Yep.
I love XKCD.
Yeah. So that was my article this week is sudo make me a sandwich.
Sudo make me a sandwich.
Much sudo about nothing.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. I love it.
All right. What do you have this week?
So I will call them 1.5 things again, because I have a article, or it wasn't even an article. To the best of my knowledge, there's no article about this, but I saw earlier on my Twitter feed a tweet by her Twitter profile says Principal Security Architect at AWS, so Merritt Bear. Anyway, the tweet was that some colleagues at least, had a car broken into and laptops stolen in downtown Mountain View while they were at dinner. And they wondered how they knew to break through the hatchback because it's not see-through. And in the thread, she says that the security person that they talked to said that thieves are using Bluetooth scanners and following the beacons to basically find cars that have, electronics in them that are worth breaking into.
Oh, so like if you leave your laptop or your phone in your car, it's probably still beaconing. It is the point there.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. And you if you have Bluetooth headphones,
right.
My laptop's closed most of the time, sometimes in my backpack or something like that. But if I pull out my headphones, it'll say connected to the laptop. So, yeah. It's definitely beaconing. So, the thread for this is a bit garbage, with a whole bunch of really impractical. Oh, shouldn't have left Bluetooth on. You can turn that off in the OS settings. And
yes, because everyone who has AirPods or whatever understands what that means.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, exactly. And then there was a tweet farther down too. I actually pulled this out to actually quote. So there's a guy that says, "I came in here expecting to see a bunch of dudes mansplaining security to a security expert, and let me tell you, it's like going to watch Old Faithful." Yes. So I will say that I'm a bit paranoid about that, I mean, I run full disk encryption, of course. We have security stuff, but I'm a little paranoid about leaving my backpack in my car ever. So I'm a little weird about sometimes, like the weirdest place is probably my dentist's office. I carry the backpack in and hang it on the coat or the coat hook behind the door in the dental hygienist's room. I'm pretty sure I'm the only person that does that. It pays to be paranoid.
Yep. There's our title right there.
Oh, okay. Could be. I wasn't really thinking that, but okay. So that was my first thing. My longer article is I got to this from Schneier's blog, but I think the link we'll put in here is the one to the Kaspersky article. This is a piece of malware that intercepts, kind of makes possible the decryption of SSL traffic. I'll say it that way, in kind of a tricky way. So they're calling this malware Reductor, and they say that it's the successor or related to a previous piece of malware called CompFun. But the crazy thing about this, and why I thought this was really, really worth kind of looking at and calling out on the podcast, is the way they're making possible the SSL interception. And the suspicious thing about this overall is that, this is an analysis of the client, but the way it's basically weakening the SSL, presumably whoever's on the other end is able to intercept the traffic somewhere, because it's not like they're sending the traffic out or really modifying the SSL traffic itself. So where and how they're intercepting is in question. But that's also probably why they meaning Kaspersky, are attributing it to, they said that they identified targets in Russia. And, I'm sorry. So this is for Reductor. They're saying they identified targets in Russia and Belarus. So what are they doing here? So what they're doing is they are basically monkey patching, or they're patching the pseudo random number generator in Chrome, used by Chrome and Firefox, for generating the what's going to be used in the client hello to generate the keys that will be used at the SSL channel, so that they can they basically control the number. It's not random.
It's no longer a random number. Gotcha.
It's no longer a random number. And then they know the client identifier. What they're putting in that client hello is information about the machine itself. So it says down there in the article, but it's basically data that they can get from their command and control side, so they can they know the traffic, what device the traffic came from. It still looks pseudo random, so they're XORing it and then they're AES encrypting it, but so it looks pseudo random, but the number is determined based on platform info. So, but the crazy thing is, there were a couple of really, really interesting things about this article, I thought. I pulled a couple things out. I should probably actually look at my notes. So the first thing is that they add digital certificates from the data section of the malware to the keychain, basically, of the target. And there's a command in the C2 control that will allow them to add more. And then this is what I was saying before, is that they don't actually touch the network packets at all. They're patching the pseudo random number generator and the client hello functions to control what the client generates. But as far as they can tell, the traffic is still going. There's no man in the middle where they're, it's not like they're replacing the SSL cert that's being used. They're not man in the middling it to try and, break inspect the traffic. They're clearly siphoning off the traffic somewhere in the chain and then using their knowledge of the client random number to be able to decrypt it.
But as far as anyone using their browser, everything behaves perfectly normal. There's they would have no idea this was happening, because the server still accepts the TLS handshake and
absolutely
where they target everything. This is just by manipulating the tools that generate the initial handshake, they're able to recreate whatever that initial handshake was when they grab a hold of a packet and decrypt the packet.
Correct. Right.
Tricky.
And then the other tricky thing about this is, so the article says that they were able to sort of detect when infected samples were getting downloaded from Ware's websites. But when they were doing that, Kaspersky presumably, were able to get the original files off of the Ware's sites, and they were not infected. So the files were often downloaded over HTTP, not HTTPS. And so the malware was being injected somewhere in between the download site and the client as well. So the quote in here is, this time, let's see, the more recent Reductor telemetry gave us a clue. This time samples were again being downloaded from Ware's websites, but we were able to confirm that in this new case, the original installers were not infected. This allowed us to confirm that Reductor's operators have some control over the target's network channel and could replace legitimate installers with infected ones on the fly. Interesting.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah, this is not script kiddies. This looks a little complicated. I'm
going to go with no. I'm going to go with no. So if you look at the article about 2/3 of the way down, it mentions the functions that have to be patched. So there's some auxiliary functions. So basically functions that are being used that are having to be patched to help, and then also the pseudo-random number generator function. So in the PRNG, it's NSS3.dll, ADV API 32, bcrypt, and Chrome. So, and in general, they're all basically to call the original function, and then, so maybe I don't think I said this earlier, but there is a small bit of randomness still used, like I think it's 4 bytes. It says a little bit higher in the article that there are a few random bytes in there, but the first 4 bytes. Okay, so yeah, the initial XOR key is the actual random part of this. So that was the first 4 bytes. Then there's a fixed constant, and then the hash of the certificates that are installed, and then the hardware hash. So that's how they get their client hello. So anyway, so yeah, the last thing I was going to bring out about this was it's the C2's pretty powerful. Like the commands that they can run, so they can do host info, get timeout, options, so parse strings and set corresponding values, the domain list, down file, so download a file, upload a file, execute a file. So those 3.
Yeah, you're toast right there.
Those 3 are pretty good.
You're done.
No op, kill, which is interesting. So this is delete installed digital certificates, files, cookies, and system registry values, including those related the class ID of the COM object, etc. And then delete file and cert list. So those are the 11 commands. But those 11 commands are enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, this was my main article for the week. I thought this was a particularly engrossing, and like I said, we'll post the link to the Kaspersky blog, but I actually wound up seeing it because I follow Bruce Schneier.
Yeah,
and he had a small excerpt.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, got something fun for me tonight?
I do.
This looks like fun,
and I actually have something that I think is hilariously fun. Because who among us has not been in the middle of an intersection at a yellow light waiting for, at a blinking yellow, or waiting to turn left on a green, and it turns yellow and then red and you're still in the intersection? Well, I'm actually just going to read the article because the article is great. And the bonus points to this is it's a guy from a hometown here, Beaverton, Oregon. So his name is Mats Jarlstrom from Sweden. He basically, I should just read the article. So after years of late night research, frustration, ridicule, and even lawsuits, Mats Jarlstrom of Beaverton could finally say, "I told you so." But he didn't use those words after learning his research into whether yellow lights were too short for drivers making turns was validated at the highest level. Instead, Jarlstrom expressed joy. "I feel totally vindicated here," he told Coin6 News, while after learning the news, which also happened to be on his birthday.
Hey, happy birthday.
The Institute for Transportation Engineers, the ITE, which makes the traffic control policies for the United States and other countries, notified Jarlstrom that he's right. Drivers often get caught in a no man's land when trying to make a turn, and they end up running red lights. The existing kinematic equation does not fully cover several dilemma zone situations for left turn and right turn movements, concluded members of an ITE panel considering Jarlstrom's research. The panel suggests that this item be properly reconsidered by ITE. So the governing body that defines traffic control policies for the United States has basically said, you're right, yellow lights are too short in the U.S.
That's
and
awesome.
he took this, and it all started like anything would in this case, right? He embarked on this mission in 2013 after his wife got a ticket for running a red light in Beaverton, hence the red light cameras. And for 6 years, he's been trying to prove that intersections with red light cameras are rigged against the laws of nature and human drivers.
That's fantastic.
Anyways, but the other thing in here too is he took his research to the city of Beaverton and they ignored him. He took it to the Oregon Department of Transportation and they ignored him. Most of them just said, hey, we follow the best practices by the ITE.
Yeah.
Despite the ITE saying that he was right. One of the best parts here is Jarlstrom forged ahead and got a big victory several years ago when Professor Alexei Maradundin, one of the engineers who wrote the original formula used to determine the duration of yellow lights, told the ITE that his 1959 equation was never meant to regulate vehicles making turns.
Wow.
But he got sued. He faced fines from Oregon's Board of Examiners for Engineering, which accused him of practicing engineering without a license for trying to share his research. So he got some free legal help from the Institute of Justice in Washington, D.C. He won a federal lawsuit that allowed him to talk about his findings.
Oh, triumph of
yes.
Persistence.
But the best line in here, my favorite line, I shouldn't say the best, but my favorite line in here is he received a congratulations note email from the professor who wrote the original 1959 equation, who told him, it's been a long process, congratulations, I'm happy for you. It's been a long process, but science wins in the end. And I just want to say, science always wins in the end.
Well, one way or another.
One way or another, you can't beat the facts.
Think there's a Scotty's this quote. Oh, now I'm going to mess it up. You cannot beat the laws of physics. You cannot fight the laws of physics.
Yes, you cannot fight the laws of physics, Jim. Yes. Yeah. Anyways, so that's great. So I will be curious now to see if yellow lights eventually start rolling out across the U.S. as a little bit longer, or whatever the new time is that the Institute of Transportation Engineers determines what the new yellow light timing should be.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my something fun because it's a local story. And it's totally sounds like an engineer who's like, there's something wrong with this. I got a ticket. I had to pay. I'm going to prove that you're right.
Right.
I just love the whole story.
That's congratulations.
Anyways.
Well done.
Yes,
done,
that's my something fun.
Jarlstrom. Okay.
Yep.
That's fantastic. All right. My something fun is actually you've heard of Y Combinator, right? News.ycombinator.com.
Yep.
So Paul Graham is, I would say a couple things. I guess I would say that I don't know that I agree with Paul on everything, many things maybe, but I encountered him a long time ago, back when Y Combinator was just getting started. I was following I was following them from very early on. And Paul wrote a book at the time. I swear I read it in a physical form of some sort that had a bunch of essays and stuff that I really enjoyed. It might have been from his blog, so maybe that's how I got him. I was in his RSS feed. But one of the things about Paul Graham is he got his early money. Shoot, I don't remember the name of the company, but he sold a company that basically was making early web stores, like storefronts, in the late 90s or something like that, or mid 90s. I mean, it was a long time ago. But the funny thing about that, or the funny story is, they built the whole company with very few people, very few resources, had a good exit, which was what led him, years later to basically start Y Combinator, which was the first of kind of the, startup accelerators, right?
Yeah.
But he did everything in Lisp. So, and credits his success to the succinctness of Lisp and the expressive power. So, he's been a Lisp advocate for years, and I would not consider myself to be a Lisper, but there's some cool stuff about it. So I first encountered Lisp in probably 91 was when I was in college. So I didn't know anything about it in high school, of course, but I encountered, and it was long after Lisp was invented, right? Lisp was invented in like the 60s. Anyway, I did it for an AI class.
Yep.
That's how we learned.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So anyway, but so Paul's been a Lisp fan forever. And my something fun here is he released a post this week, says he's been working on this for a couple of years, but it's basically a new programming language called Bell. And the intent was, to go back and, well, he makes some comments in the post that we'll put in here, but he divides the Lisp era into the theoretical kind of underpinnings of why Lisp was created. So, it wasn't created with the expectation that you would actually write program a computer in it. It was a way of expressing computation, sort of in, how would you build a Turing complete language that you could talk about computability. And so, the beginnings of Lisp didn't have things like I/O, right? I mean, things that are practical necessities for an actual, computer language that you program on. Unfortunately, your philosophical purity only works until you get to the boundary and you have to interact with the real world, whether it's to read something from a pipe or write something to standard out or interact with a network, things like that. So his intent here was, well, let's go back and basically try and write what happens if you stay in the philosophical realm a little bit longer. What can you do? And so I gotta say, I did not make it to the bottom of these articles.
Holy crap, I just started scrolling. It goes forever.
It's a full, basically a full spec and implementation. So, the other thing about Lisp is that you can implement a Lisp compiler in Lisp because you build up on itself. So this is, I don't know that this will be practical in or even exist in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, but it's interesting from a philosophical computer science point of view, and it's interesting for sort of looking at what do you have to do to sort of build a system from the ground up with sort of the core axioms and what the core the minimum set of capabilities have to be in order to build something on top of it. And there's it's just great. You could probably teach a whole computer class on, computer theory class using something like this. So anyway, we don't have to dwell on that. I can't do it justice, especially since I haven't finished reading it, and even then, I'm sure I won't retain everything. But check it out. I thought this should be my something fun this week.
Really quickly, Paul Graham's book was Hackers and Painters.
Oh yes. Thank you.
And it was ViaWeb was the company that he sold to Yahoo.
Real-time correction. Thank you very much.
I followed him for a long time as well because he reminded me of, I don't remember what class it was. It was a 300 level class, and my professor, he did the whole class in Scheme. And I had just had my Lisp class, and it was wacky and out there. And then Scheme just takes Lisp to an extreme with parentheses, but he taught it all in Lisp. But he did the same thing. He left the university, or in working with the university, he sold a company to Yahoo somewhere, or to one of those eBay or something like that. He sold his company and went off to do just fine for himself. But a similar story, right place, right time,
and right execution.
Early days. Yep. Early days of the internet.
Yeah,
all right.
It's cool. Yeah. Anyway, check it out. I like it.
I'm getting flashbacks, and they're not happy ones. skimming through this.
All
right,
it's good stuff.
All
right, man. Have a good evening, and I will talk to you.
I
guess probably next week. Honestly, we'll see.
We'll see you when I see you.
All right, sounds good, Eric. Bye.
See you, John. Bye.